Hi everyone, welcome back to Storytime Recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the film from 2022, Terrifier 2. Without any further, let's get started. The movie begins with an injured coroner who has been brutally attacked by Art the Clown. He is crawling across the floor and reaching for his phone to contact 911. As Art casually looks in the mirror and writes his name in blood. Then, in an attempt to kill him, he reaches for a reflex hammer. He bashes his skull and tears it apart to remove his internal organs, including his eyes and brain. Later, in his bloody glory, he goes to a laundromat. Unbeknownst to the sleeping employee, Art undresses and throws his costume inside the washing machine. The clown passes the time by reading the newspaper when he spots a little girl wearing clown makeup. She approaches him curiously and begins to play with him. When the employee wakes up, he finds Art playing with thin air, leading us to wonder if the girl is just a creation of his imagination. After a while, we see Art leaving the laundryman after killing the employee by impaling the mop handle through his head. We then fast-forwarded to a year later, where we find a girl named Sienna Shaw in her candlelit bedroom, working feverishly to complete her handcrafted warrior Halloween costume, which includes a sword and a pair of wings. The costume holds special meaning for her since her late father, who died of a brain tumor, designed it. While having dinner with her family, Barbara, Sienna's mother, asks her brother Jonathan about his Halloween costume. Despite her sister's and mother's objections, Jonathan says he'd like to dress up as the notorious clown serial murderer from the news. Once supper is finished, Sienna discusses her brother's interest in serial killers with her mother.
So you say?
While upstairs, Jonathan is researching the previous year's killing incident involving Art the Clown. Later that evening, Sienna dreams of being in a clown cafe where she meets Art the Clown. Art starts off entertaining everyone by giving out candy, but Sienna doesn't seem comfortable at all. When it's her turn, Art gives her a gift of soup that contains an extremely repulsive beating heart and worms that begin to fill the box with blood. Art eventually breaks the charade by pulling out a submachine gun and murdering everyone. When the clown is going to burn Sienna, she manages to survive and flee, but not before the clown uses a flamethrower to burn the remaining guests and the guitarist. Then Art uses a flamethrower to burn the entire area before approaching Sienna to kill her. After removing the warrior's blade from her room to protect herself, Sienna wakes up to discover that her costume's wings are on fire. She tries to put out the flames but is unable to, so she quickly leaves the room to call her mother Barbara, who enters with a fire extinguisher. Understandably enraged, the mother scolds Sienna for keeping her candles lit before going to bed, even though she insists she already did. When her mother departs, she approaches what's left of her wings and discovers the sword her father got her is still in perfect condition. Meanwhile, the clown appears on the other side of the story, and the young clown girl is watching a talk show where Vicky, the only survivor from the first film, is being interviewed. Vicky's face is now severely damaged. Vicky claims to have watched Art murder himself, so the clown jumps up and smashes the TV.
Thought happened.
The next school day, Jonathan, the sibling of Sienna, is at school when he raises his hand to use the restroom. Instead, he finds Art the Clown and the young girl playing with a dead possum that has been disemboweled. When they notice Jonathan, they throw the dead possum at him, frightening him. Jonathan flees until he runs into a teacher who decides to investigate and discovers the dead possum there. Despite all of this, Sienna and her pals from high school are deep in discussion over how survivor Vicky, the clown, named the talk show host using her bare hands following the live interview. Returning to Jonathan, his mother is clearly distraught to hear that he has been suspended from school because the teacher believes Jonathan brought the dead possum. After school, as Sienna is busy shopping, she goes to a costume store with her friend Allie to get a new pair of wings. When Allie runs across Art the Clown, she doesn't give it a second look because she thinks he's just someone dressed like him. Sienna is frightened when she sees Art in the store staring and smiling at her. She rushes to the cashier to pay, only to discover that she left her bag downstairs. The clown then hangs around behind her, making goofy gestures, and as the shopkeeper goes to get the bag, Art approaches and starts poking her, which naturally makes the girl uncomfortable. When the shopkeeper witnesses this, he finally scolds him, and Sienna decides she can't take it any longer. She leaves the store right away, and Art closes the door and walks up to him while carrying a large bag. As he gets ready to pay for his purchase, he pulls out a number of tools from his bag, which annoys the shopkeeper and causes him to become irate. Without saying anything, Art smashes a bottle against his head and stabs the sharp end into the poor man's eye before brutally decapitates the shop vendor. Soon after, a mother and son come across an artwork that carries the shopkeeper's head. The son expresses his excitement at seeing such realistic Halloween decor. After Sienna returns home safely, her brother greets her and tells her that he saw the clown at school along with a young girl whose face he has seen in their father's sketchbook. He then starts showing his sister the pages, one of which has an early drawing of the clown and other murder victims from the previous year. On the very last page, he shows her a drawing of Sienna dressed as a warrior, clutching a beast's head in her hand. Though it's too soon for her to believe him, Jonathan insists that these ancient images must be symbolic because their father gave Sienna a warrior sword for a reason. Barbara, the mother, interrupts them to let Sienna know that Jonathan has been suspended for bringing a dead possum to school. Sienna expresses her disappointment in her brother, and before she leaves the room, he begs her to spend Halloween night at home because he is afraid something bad might happen. However, Sienna won't listen. As he visits an alley house on the opposite side of town, she joyfully meets him and recognizes him as the man she met at the costume store. Before closing the door, she informs him she has nothing to give, assuming he is old enough for a trick or treat, but he begins hitting on it. When she opens the door again and puts some sweets in his bag, Setting Allie is startled to see bloody tools inside. She retreats inside and waits as the art disappears. After a couple hours, the sound of breaking glass startles Allie as she is applying makeup for Halloween. She runs downstairs to find her glass door shattered and is startled to see Art hanging carelessly in the kitchen. The psycho catches her and slashes her face with a knife before ruthlessly skinning and mutilating her body with various sets of knives and scissors. Afterwards, he smears her exposed skin with salt and bleach before pulling the unfortunate girl's skin off as he descends the steps. When Allie's mother returns from work, she is startled to see the damaged door. She immediately goes to Allie's room where she sees Art and the horrific remains of her daughter's disfigured body. In the subsequent scene, Art opens the door to Allie's house and hands out candy to trick or treat, some of whom even complain about it being sticky. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Sienna and her other friend Brooke are attending a Halloween party. Sienna wonders where Allie is, so Brooke tells her to enjoy herself.
We're gonna have fun. Stress-free environment.
Back at the house, Jonathan chooses to alert his mother about his father's symbolic drawings. However, she becomes enraged and tears up the book, upsetting Jonathan. He curses at her, earning a slap from his mother, and decides to storm off. Barbara hears some noise and quickly goes downstairs to discover the family's car vandalized. At first, she assumes Jonathan is the culprit, but Jonathan isn't because he's actually in the driveway and sees a strange car in front of the house with the clown girl inside. Fearing for his life, Jonathan retreats inside the house. Returning to the party, Brooke subtly lets Sienna know that she's added Molly to her drink. Not long later, Sienna gets a call from her mother, who goes on a rant about Jonathan's covering the car with toilet paper, shaving cream, and eggs. Following the call, the mother starts to clean the car. While doing so, she finds Art sitting inside. He takes a shotgun to her face, instantly murdering her. At the gathering, it freaks Sienna out and makes her have a panic attack when she sees the tiny clown girl in the crowd. But strangely, she appears to be the only person at the party who can see the little child. Back home, the clown greets Jonathan by showing him her deceased mother sitting at the dinner table. He then swoops in, places mashed potato on her empty plate, and shoves the remaining mashed potato into her crater-like face. Jonathan tries to flee, but is stopped by the clown girl. He escapes the deadly duo and goes upstairs to grab Sienna's sword, but Art captures him and gives him a needle injection to make him unconscious. After that, he chooses to carry the sword with him. Brooke and her partner Jeff are driving Sienna home as all of this is going on. However, Sienna gets a call from Jonathan claiming to be at the abandoned carnival, but in actuality, it's the clown girl imitating Jonathan's voice, concerned for her brother's safety. Despite Brooke's cautions, Sienna asks Jeff to drop her off at the specified location and leaves. Jeff advises that they should assist Sienna in her search for her brother, but Brooke protests, believing that Sienna's brother has been acting strangely since his father passed away. She also says that the father was diagnosed with schizophrenia due to a brain tumor. As Sienna starts to look around, Jonathan texts her to let her know that he is at the Terrifier, the carnival's haunted house. Jonathan is startled upon waking up and seeing the clown girl, whose entire face has now been intentionally mutilated. He flees for his life, while Jeff goes outside to relieve himself only to be attacked by Art, who then breaks the car window and pulls Brooke out, allowing her to fight back and escape. She calls Sienna for assistance as she runs into the haunted house to hide, but as she runs, she trips and falls into the bathroom, where Art finds her and corners her. He then beats her with a spiked bat and kills her. Shortly after, Sienna enters the room and discovers Brooke's dead body, the two of them locking eyes. Sienna finds Jonathan behind the artwork and calls for him to leave while taking a piece of wood and punching him. The clown manages to overcome Sienna and beat her up before leaving to get Jonathan. Still alive as Sienna stands up, she discovers that Art's weapon is laying close by. Meanwhile, Jonathan is being teased by Art the clown everywhere he tries to go, until Art finally captures him and slices his cheek. Thankfully, Sienna stops him by coming at him from behind and wounding the clown with his own weapon. She then drags her brother away. But because of her injuries, she had to pause and collect her breath. Jonathan apologizes, thinking that this is all because of his father's sword and that the clowns just sent him here to lure Sienna. The two then continue on their way out when Art ambushes them and begins attacking Jonathan. Sienna tries to help her brother, but Art pushes her away and continues to beat the kid. The girl doesn't give up, though, and after being struck several times, she crawls across the floor to defend her brother. After battling him for a while, Sienna finally manages to get hold of the clown. She beats him with it as she should and kills him by impaling a rod through his head. But it seems that he is immortal, the clown. As the two struggle, Jonathan discovers a gun strapped to Art's leg and grabs it. Art is then shot by the boy. Things get strange when Sienna passes out from lack of oxygen and her brother shakes her to wake her up. When she opens her eyes, her mother tells her that she's safe. She hears Jonathan shout that the person she's speaking to isn't her mother. Instead, it's the clown girl. When she awakens from the dream, she finds herself in the room by herself and searches for Jonathan. She eventually finds her brother unconscious in front of the Art. She starts beating him, but he doesn't move. Instead, he chokes her and knocks her to the ground. The next time she wakes up, she sees what appears to be a portal in front of her. But before she can react, something appears from behind her and stabs her with her father's sword. This sends her down the portal and into the water cell inside the clown cafe she had dreamed about earlier in the film, where a few people covered in blood are laughing and frolicking in front of her. Eventually, she drowns to death. Back in the surface world, the Art approaches Jonathan and starts eating his flesh, waking him up as he struggles to escape and screaming for Sienna's assistance. Coincidentally, a sword that was lying nearby begins to glow, magically healing Sienna's wounds and resurrecting her. With ease, she exits the portal and uses the sword to slay the clown, finishing him off by decapitating him. Afterwards, she rushes towards her brother, and the two siblings give each other a relieved embrace. Meanwhile, the small clown girl enters the room unexpectedly and takes Art's severed head with her. Vicky, the only survivor of the first film, appears in the movie's credits scene inside a mental hospital. Blood shoots between her legs as she uses it to vandalize the wall. Vicky plus Art is visible as it turns out she is in labor and demonic births Art's head. A nurse enters and screams in horror as Vicky laughs hysterically while holding Art's head. Thanks for watching, and remember to turn on your notifications to watch more movie recaps like this one.